Government has put the cart before the horse by publishing Eskom's exemption first and promising a technical explanation later. That's the response from Greenpeace to the Treasury's decision to exempt Eskom from disclosing irregular and wasteful expenditure in its annual reports. Let's bring in Greenpeace Africa climate and energy campaigner Thandile Chiyavanhu to discuss this first. Thandile, thank you so much for your time this evening. So Treasury has said it would issue that technical explanation soon to explain the rationale behind this measure. At best, it seems a little bit odd telling us about the exemption but not having that explanation at the ready. What is most worrying for you about this exemption?
Good evening, and thank you so much for having me. As we do mention, it is quite concerning that they've decided to issue this gazette ahead of actually issuing the technical explanation, because as South Africans at first glance, what we see is possibly another opportunity for Eskom to avoid accountability and be able to sweep the corruption that they have been so that they've perpetuated in the past under the rug. So it's quite important that we request them to handle this process with transparency.
So far that they've said that this is being done to prevent Eskom from getting qualified or negative audits, which could prevent the state-owned entity from getting loans. Do you buy that?
Well, I think really it depends on us being able to see what those technical assessments are and making judgments from that point. As it is right now, we're unable to make those judgments because they have not allowed us the opportunity to do so by just issuing this gazette without actually issuing the technical explanation. And we would like to be able to have the information at hand to be able to make that determination. But until we can do that, we can only speculate at this point. So it's really important that the minister recognize this and consider how South Africans are feeling in this situation, that we've been dealing with our state utility that has been marred by multiple corruption and maladministration scandals, and that is facing a massive crisis. So it's only natural for South Africans to be concerned about this and worried that this could potentially be an opportunity for Eskom trying to avoid taking accountability.
Given Eskom's track record where transparency is concerned, do you find this concerning? And I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit here and saying that, well, we don't really have transparency as it is from Eskom in terms of irregular expenditure, fruitful or wasteful expenditure. So does this exemption really make that much difference?
Well, as it is, there is. And in the past, it has been quite an issue, the lack of transparency around the way in which the state utility operates. And that's something that we need to continue as civil society and as the general public, calling for more transparency around these processes, especially considering that we have, as a part of our Just Energy Transition Plan partnership, been granted or been given a grant to allow for a just transition to take place in South Africa. And it's important that as these funds are availed to us, that we handle that particular process as well with transparency. So it's something that it's deeply concerning at our state utility, and it's something that we should continuously be concerned about at every turn. If there is an issue that arises, we should continue to be concerned about it and demand transparency from the state utility and the government.
Some would say that results speak for themselves, and as long as we can put an end to rotational blackouts and get more grid stability going, then it doesn't matter how we achieve those means. Do you agree?
Definitely not. I think something that is very important is ensuring that the state resources are used efficiently, and that all of our public state utilities are expected to be held to the same standard and treated with a uniform approach. So it's important that we recognize this as well, that it isn't just a matter of providing favor to certain state utilities for the favor at the end of the day of being able to access electricity. These things are a part of our policy and approaches for a reason, and it's important that we ensure that we are maintaining these processes for the sake of being able to not only ensure that corruption is not something that continues to be deep-rooted within our state utility, but also that our resources are being used in an appropriate manner for the enjoyment of all South Africans.
Treasury has in the past been praised for its measured approach towards trying to ensure that we get some kind of growth going in our economy and trying to minimize risk or minimize fallout from both the pandemic, from our energy crisis especially. Why do you think they would react in this way where Eskom is concerned? Do you think that Eskom has some kind of free pass where other departments perhaps don't?
To a certain degree, because of the electricity crisis that we're aware we are faced with, we have seen an approach from government allowing exemptions from Eskom on a number of issues, and one in particular that Greenpeace Africa is concerned about is the environmental regulations. So Eskom has been allowed to flout the minimum emission standards for years, and even still now, as we're facing this electricity crisis, it's being seen as another opportunity for them to be granted exemption in the face of their massive emissions in areas in Mpumalanga, and an assortment of other power stations. So this is something we need to continue to place pressure on the government on in terms of its approach and not allowing Eskom to enjoy favor simply because it is the state utility. They need to be held accountable for the protection of people's rights, because at this point, they've been allowed to flout regulations continuously simply because they're the state utility.
It's very unlikely, despite the national outcry, that Treasury would backtrack on this kind of exemption. But what would your plea be to Treasury to try and provide the kind of information that would set you at Greenpeace at ease?
I think to ensure that this would be a process that's handled with transparency and that there are valid reasons given for the decision to grant Eskom the exemption. And also, there needs to be an end in sight for this crisis. We need to be able to see that Eskom is able to get back on track and establish a healthy balance sheet, and that we're able to see them making committed strides towards reducing emissions and getting on track to achieving this just transition. Once we're able to see that there is a commitment there and that there is a concerted effort to address the issues of maladministration and corruption at the utility, it could potentially put both Greenpeace Africa, civil society, and the public at ease about the situation at the state utility.
Well, thank you very much for speaking to us this evening. That's Greenpeace Africa Climate and Energy Campaigner Thandile Chiyavanhu.